All right, welcome to the Scaling Secrets podcast. We just got done with a 2-day long training here at Otter HQ, and I'm sitting down with Paul Bramson from Paul Bramson Companies. He is a global keynote speaker and leadership and sales trainer. He has worked with Fortune 500 companies, and he just got done absolutely crushing it on a 2-day seminar.
Great audience, by the way. Great.
I like to think so.
I was great.
I'm biased.
Impressive.
We've also got Scott here, our co-founder and operating CEO of Otter PR. And we're going to be discussing some of the principles that we learned over the past 2 days, specifically regarding sales. And we learned some unbelievable tactics and questions that you need to answer, that you need to ask
Sure.
in order to get the close. So I'm super excited to get there.
Yep.
But before we do, I'd love to hear a little bit about you, Paul, for the audience.
Sure.
Who are you and what do you do?
So first of all, it's been a pleasure working with both of you. Your team is unbelievably impressive. The energy, their vigor to get better, incredibly impressive. And I can say that after, I know it's going to be hard to believe, but I've been doing this for over 25 years. Speaking, I've had my own company now for 22 years, working with all different industries at all different levels. Sales, leadership, and communication. Sales is where I grew up. Sales is what I am most passionate about. So I'm excited to actually talk about sales today. I will say that it's when you get the fortunate experience to work with a company like Otter, you get to see the next generation of sales leaders. And that's really what stood out to me over the last 2 days.
I feel like that was a kind of a running theme over the past couple days. It's the difference between where you've seen corporate culture go from the 1990s until where we are today in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be an interesting place to start. What were some of the main differences that you noticed working with our very young team? A lot of people just graduated college compared to when you started training 23 years ago.
Yeah, so you require me to think back a number of years where some of the people in the room were not born yet. So I would say that the biggest difference is when you sit in front of an audience like Otter and the experience level that they have, it is the refreshingly inquisitive, and I say this respectfully, they're not jaded through experiences. So they're open to any and all concepts and the elevation of skills. And as you know, being the different generation of the leaders that you are, you can appreciate that self-development for this generation is incredibly important. So they came in there ready to go, coming back from breaks on time. They wanted to get better. And it's not that the other generations of the other audiences don't want to get better, but you could see it in the eyes, you can see it in the facial expressions that this was their time to elevate, and they appreciated the investment.
I think so. And I was actually surprisingly happy that a lot of them showed up both days. We were here 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. both days. And
Long days.
Nobody had their phone or computers out.
Everyone's paying a lot of attention. It was beautiful.
Right. And you look at what people are saying about Gen X and millennials. They can't get off their phones. They're addicted. Maybe it just goes to show how engaging of a trainer you were, but
I can't disagree.
people were engaged.
Yeah, I was
They were
impressed.
listening, They were paying attention. I was impressed as well.
Listen, it starts at the top, and I think it trickles down, it cascades down. You both were there the entire 8-hour days, and the people just followed the lead. So I was really impressed from the top down.
Have you seen a difference in energy from kind of all the trainings you've done through different generations?
So this is an interesting question, Scott, coming from you. I can appreciate this. It's the energy level at the very beginning is the difference. So when you talk about experienced, successful professionals that have been doing it for a number of years, they come in more skeptical.
Right.
There's that, what am I going to learn today? Is this really going to be worth my time out of the field, so to speak? The difference is when I looked at the audience with Otter is eyes wide open from the very beginning. They knew that if you believed in the investment, that they should believe in the investment, and that's what I saw in their eyes.
Yeah.
That's the way it felt.
I think so too, and I hope we did a good job communicating to them. I mean, this was tens of thousands of dollars worth of investment for us, not just in what you're worth, but having me and Scott's time for 2 days, and then all of our staff, which we essentially gave off for 2 days to learn. But the goal is that pays back in multiples.
And it definitely will.
I think so. Through communication with clients, communication with prospective clients.
For sure.
And intercommunication in our organization.
100%.
And all those three things I think are really important, and there's so much overlap, and that's what I realized over the past couple of days. It's really all comes down to communication skills.
And that's the thing that you said something about the younger generation being tied to the electronics or the technology, and I'm here to say that I noticed something different with the younger generation. I noticed that they're tethered to technology until their interest is piqued in something different.
Right.
And today, the last 2 days, they were not tethered to the technology. And the one thing is, they are excellent communicators. They just have different communication styles than past generations. So I was really impressed with that.
I think that's a good point. I think the phone is kind of a cop-out, a distraction when you're not engaged with whatever's happening in the world in front of you.
For sure.
But when you are interested, I think it's very easy to put the phone away, to put the computer away.
Totally
and
agree.
engage in what's happening in the world. Going back to what you've noticed in the corporate industry for the past 30 years, how it's evolved, 23 years. What are some of the good things that you've seen happen to corporate America? And what are some of the places where you think we may have worked backwards?
Oof. So let's talk the positives. So technology has been a huge game changer.
Right.
Believe it or not, the internet was not around when I started working.
I can't imagine.
So we're talking about
now by hand.
Can you imagine the phone books, phone booths? I mean, we're talking about, so technology has been the big game changer. I do believe that the biggest change I've seen is the professional development is at the forefront. Year after year, there's been a momentum for people have been screaming for it. They want that professional development. And a lot of times people, they did invest in years past, but that was a nice to have. Now companies today are looking at, this is a need to have. If we want to keep our best people, if we want to create our best people, we need to invest in our people. And the other thing is that it's okay for people to want to grow. It's all people, the word meritocracy, growing within a company, people have said it, didn't necessarily practice it. People want people to grow within a company. And by the way, there are leaders out there that if they want to grow and leave the company that they're in, because that's what's best for the employee, people are more open to that. So to me, that's been a real positive thing, You said something about what's been the negative.
Yeah, how do you think it's devolved in any way?
I think there has been the hardest part of evolution is people that don't want evolution. So there's been a lot of, I can speak to my generation, there's been older generations that, listen, the millennials are getting older now, by the way. The millennials are not, you're still young. You're not even millennials. Wait, you are you you're the bottom end of millennial.
Yeah.
The Gen Z are coming in. There was the entitlement comments. There's the tech. All they do is technology. Oh, work-life balance. Heaven forbid you said work-life balance. That means they don't want to work. That was such a fallacy.
Yeah.
That was a real fallacy. So I believe that it took too long for people to get on board with, listen, the millennials are the biggest generation in the workforce, and it's not even close. It's not even close. Boomers are now retiring. Gen X was the smallest of the generations. The millennials are the biggest generation by far in the workforce. Gen Z is now coming in. I always thought it was, I didn't like hearing that, why do we have to pivot to the different generations? So I think it took longer than it needed to take for companies to embrace that.
No, I like that answer a lot. Paul, we learned something really valuable, and it seemed like this is what our team got. They all said that this was the most value that they got out of the weekend, from what I can hear.
Okay.
And that's identifying other people's needs and being able to adjust their communications for what those needs are. So what were the 4 types of needs that we learned about over the past couple days? What are they?
So when we talk about the importance is we need to connect better with people. And if people just understood that connection is how people thrive in relationships, whether it's personally or professionally. You mentioned the 4 different types. There are 4 different types. People have built 4 different ways and underlying needs. Number 1, and they're in no particular order. Need to be liked, need to be right, need to be safe, and need to look good. When you understand how somebody's built, you can start to pivot your phrases and your behaviors to better resonate with somebody so you have healthier relationships. And I'll tell you, this connecting like a pro piece was what you had both days, both for sales and leadership. So bravo that you were able to get both. Is an incredibly hot topic. People love it in keynotes. They love it in trainings because the connection piece is at the forefront of how healthy relationships happen in the workplace as well as in life.
Yeah, it's funny. I think as humans, we can be selfish and think that our way of thinking is everybody's way of thinking. And when you do exercises like the 4 different needs, you see that, wow, people think very differently. Their needs are very different than mine. They think very differently than I do.
That's right.
So Scott, for example, you're...
Wait, Scott's different than you and I?
No. I think he's
pretty close.
I actually think he's a lot different.
So it's funny. Me and Scott did the disc assessment. And
Okay.
I was
All right.
Yeah.
more I than D.
I could see that you're more D than I.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
but
I
we're
could
still very close on that circle.
Fair.
And I think similarly with the 4 needs, we were
Yeah.
both very close, but just a little bit flipped.
Yours was right.
Right.
Yours is look good.
Yeah.
Right was number 2?
Yeah.
Oh, right's number 2 for you? And yours was look good number 2?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
with that, I like hearing how you tailor communication based on how you know who you're talking to. So a lot of times needs to be rights. You have 2 needs to be rights. They butt heads.
They can. Friction for sure.
So for us, kind of walk us through best ways to communicate.
You need to compliment him like every sentence.
I mean, he does have
And you
amazing
need to
hair.
tell him he's right every single time he talks. Oh, yeah, here's a
the
giveaway.
hair.
So you asking just in terms of what's best way to communicate
I
with
mean,
both of you?
specifically with us, just so that our audience can hear, but give
Yeah.
kind of life examples of if you have a manager or you're trying to make a sale with someone who, I like to be right. So kind of how do you handle that communication?
So when you talk,
Sorry.
Sure.
For the audience, I know we said, need to be right, need to look good. What do those things mean? Can we define each one briefly to talk about, what are some fundamental thought patterns of a need to be liked,
So-
of a need to be right?
Sure. So again, the underlying needs are how you are inherently built. Number one, this is not a personality assessment. Personality assessments absolutely have their place. This is how people take in information and they decide whether it's motivating to them or whether it's demotivating to them. So that's a really important foundational concept about underlying needs. When you think about the different underlying needs, the need to be right like yourself, need to look good like you and I, the need to be safe and the need to be liked, there are certain things that you need to think about. So for somebody like Scott, when you talk about a need to be right, they have a lot of strong characteristics. They're very factual, they're very pragmatic, they're analytical, they can be linear, they can be very bright. So when you're speaking to them, they want to know that you're coming from a place of fact, that it's not a gray area, it's maybe more black and white. Use metrics, use data, and also say things to them like,
You're
you
right.
know what, you're right. You're right, and if you disagree with them, you better be able to back it up.
Yeah.
That's a key thing with a need to be right. They're excellent people to have on the team. They're excellent people to have as friends, but just understand that they will call you out if they think that what you're talking about may not be correct. So be ready for that. So that's the need to be right. When you talk about you and I like a need to look good, we're all about our own personal brand. We're really interested in making sure that what we're doing very well. Things resonate with us when we are complimented. When we feel like we're excelling, we want to know that. We want to hear that. If you're going to provide feedback to us and it's constructive, you need to be very careful because we can be very sensitive to feedback because we have a certain perception of our own brand. That would be the need to look good. When you talk about a need to be safe, it's all about their boundaries. They love rules, they love processes, and they love procedures. They check the box on things. They're probably somebody that will run things by you. These are also the people that if you want a spontaneous trip, it's probably not happening. We need to plan accordingly. That's just how they are. You probably know people like this.
Girlfriend.
I was going to say maybe date. So it's there, but you need to plan appropriately.
Yes.
Fair enough. So that would be a need to be safe. By the way, when change happens rapidly for a need to be safe. It can be very uncomfortable for them. So just understand that about them. And then there's the most obvious, the need to be liked. These are people that walk around with a smile on their face. Team players, they volunteer, they're gentle, they're kind, they're easy emotionally. So what I would say with a need to be liked, when you're around a need to be liked, is just be gentle and kind. Please don't mistake their weakness. Please don't mistake their kindness for weakness. And that's the big thing with the need to be liked. So we're all, by the way, a combination of these 4. You just have to determine what you're dominant. And the dominant comes from really at a young age, really around high school. You've been this way. You might pivot in life, but you've always been that way. So you need to decide what your dominant is. And when you decide what your dominant is, then you decide what kind of people you want to hang around, the people that make you feel good. Hopefully, I know it's a long answer.
No, that's a great
Okay.
answer, and I think we needed to review those so
Sure.
that we can understand the context of the next questions. Scott, did you notice any patterns when we were going around the room? We had 30-some people in for the past couple days, identifying our underlying needs. Did you notice any patterns in our organization based on what their needs were and what their roles were in the organization?
Well, I think the first thing was a lot of people had struggled with finding out what their actual needs were.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was very unique. We had people texting their husband and asking questions about that. So
They got it wrong.
they got it.
That's right.
And even for me, I'm very personally, I think I'm very split between looks good and needs to be right.
Mhm.
So I think that there are patterns on where people's roles are. So you looked at a lot of our leadership, and our leadership were more needs to be right or needs to look good. And I think that's potentially part of the drive, whereas we had HR, which was more needs to be safe, which makes a lot of sense. And then a lot of our communication experts and publicists or TV experts, broadcasters were really the ones that need to be liked, which might be a little surprising because you'd think looks good versus need to be liked.
They did look good, by the way.
They all
They
look
have great hair. Great hair.
great hair. But it does, in a lot of sense, make sense where those kind of roles fit in nicely. And I know as a company, we do kind of EQ testing, and we've done disc assessment.
Brilliant.
And a lot of that really helps us place people, especially when it comes to looking at HR and figuring out, is this the right fit for them? Because you want to make sure that people are happy in their roles. And so if you're getting your needs kind of met in that role, it's ideal.
100%.
It's definitely not a personality test, but I think it's a great tool in the toolbox when you're evaluating a person and looking at the big picture, like the DISC, the 4 underlying needs, the IQ test, the
Oh,
EQ
yeah.
test. It's very easy to kind of look at that in addition to a real interview, the questions that we ask them separately, the writing assessment, and get a pretty good picture of who they are and what roles they would be good in. Paul, how about you? Do you notice anything from your 23 years as a trainer in terms of where people fit in an organization on those different underlying needs or maybe different personality assessments?
So when I work with organizations and I see people grow within an organization, I do think that I think, Scott, you mentioned certain roles. Sales, they're probably one or two. Need to look good or need to be liked.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you can have a degree of all four, but those are probably more dominant. When you think of things like the finance, think of things like operations, maybe more of a safe and need to be right type of thing. But as you grow in leadership, which becomes really interesting, they become vetted out, meaning need to be rights can get into high leadership roles. By the way, I'm not being definitive. This is not an absolute. Need to look goods can get into higher positions. Need to be safe can do that as well. The one that typically has an unfortunate ceiling is the need to be liked. And when I notice that is because a lot of times senior leadership, executive leadership feel that by the way, this is a perception. I'm not saying I agree with this. The perception is they can't make the tough calls or the tough decisions or have the tough conversations.
It is hard to give, especially negative feedback when you want someone to like you. And we see
100%.
that. We definitely see that as you don't want to tell someone that they're doing a bad job if you need to be liked, especially if you're friends with them outside of work too.
100%.
It's a difficult thing, whereas I'm a little bit more comfortable with it. I don't like doing it, but with the need to be right, I'll let them know, like, this is what needs to happen.
And Scott brings up a really good point because, and I say this respectfully, in a need to be right will choose content first over the relationship. It doesn't mean they want to offend,
Right.
but you're gonna hit back on the content. Where the need to be like goes the opposite direction. They will go relationship first and then content. So what I see in the 23 years is, unfortunately, there is that, I'll say, the glass ceiling that doesn't, they have a hard time getting to the sea level because of the perception of them having the tough conversations and the inaccurate perception of kindness equals weakness. And that's not the case.
You know where I think you lost a lot of us? At least lost a lot of people on the safe one. I think you lost a lot of team members on safe with the traffic violations. We had maybe 2 or 3 people raise their hand for need to be safe, and that's because one of the defining characteristics that you mentioned for the need to be safe is obeying traffic rules. And
Well, that's how it shows up. Yes, that's right.
maybe like the extreme need to be safe, so like
Fair.
won't jaywalk.
They won't.
Yeah.
Who was somebody in the room today? They
We
wouldn't.
had a couple.
Yeah, I'm not walking. Why are you walking? It doesn't say walk
But I
because there's no traffic.
HR.
A lot of people
Exactly.
that I had
HR.
a lot of people that I had pegged as need to be safe, like maybe Tiffany, who would jaywalk any day. Like that's they saw that and didn't identify with it and copped out to something else. I think
That's funny.
that may be an
By the way,
interesting
the need to be safe can be the tricky one, but it is about the boundaries. They typically like to follow rules, and I'm going to say this: you know, you don't truck. You do not cut traffic. I know you don't. You don't break the queue.
one. Everyone jaywalks, especially in St. Pete.
And Boston,
Yeah,
for sure.
New York.
Most cities, yeah.
For sure. For sure.
I kind of want to jump into a little bit of sales. So
Yeah,
you brought a
please.
lot of this into sales.
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought was really insightful was how you went through how to ask questions.
Yeah.
So this is something that I had never thought of is when I ask you a question, if you're my sales executive and I say, hey, I really like to get good results in this. You brought up a way to reflect and learn more about that. And it's something that I never thought because as a salesperson, I always make assumptions. So can you kind of dive into that for us?
Sure. So Scott is referencing the piece on when you are having a conversation with somebody and people are talking to you, the big miss is we as humans are somehow we have become conditioned to filter what people say to you. And what I mean by filter is somebody will say something to you and you suddenly we automatically know what they're talking about, so we jump into answers. So I think the two things that happen to stand out when we talk about communication is, first of all, are you hearing what somebody says? Are you acknowledging? We talked about the acknowledgement part.
That's a big piece.
Allowing space, because I think you said you get annoyed with people when they ask you questions. It's sort of like, it seems like an interrogation.
Yeah.
So I talked about what was helpful for you with the acknowledgement.
The acknowledgement was huge for me. I've been in situations where I've sat in meetings and I couldn't figure out what I didn't like about what my team was doing, or in situations where I've been on sales calls and I knew I had a terrible experience, but I couldn't point it on why. And I think a lot of it is because that salesperson isn't acknowledging what you're saying. They're asking you a question as almost a check mark, but they don't acknowledge it, listen to it, and then reflect on what you've said. It's almost like sending an email in and asking a question, and they respond something completely different. You're just like, is this a robot?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
An old school tactic, restating the question in your answer.
That's
Just
a-
so
that's a
people hear heard.
Excellent acknowledgement. This acknowledgement also allows for a verbal cushion. It allows the conversation to breathe, essentially. You talk in order to get through that filtering piece. When people are talking to you, you need to figure out in a conversation, what is it that somebody just said to me, especially in a selling conversation or an influencing type of conversation. Let's use the word. Let's use the I word. We need to figure out, or you need to figure out, everyone needs to figure out when you're having that conversation, when somebody says something to you, you have to figure out, do you understand what somebody means from their perspective? We have our own definitions of perspective, but that doesn't necessarily mean what they mean. When you understand what somebody means, then you give a better answer that will more likely resonate with them.
Exactly. And the example that I have is if someone asks if, Otter PR, if they're going to do a good job for you. So what does good mean to you? For me, it's a different answer. I'm an engineer. I'm analytical. I want to see data, and that's usually my answer. But both of you are look goods. So it's probably more of how your perception is. Is this going to boost your perception in the public's eyes and your audience eyes and your friends, your family? Is it going to help you look better? And so if I didn't ask a follow-up question to learn kind of your perspective of good results, I would have answered with my answer and not your answer.
Right. And I will tell you, Scott, more often than not, that's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
It's not that it's unprofessional. It might be inaccurate.
Right.
So what I'm encouraging people to do is, instead of just answering it through your own optics, say, listen, good means different things to different people. What do you mean by good? So I can give you an answer that might resonate with you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Powerful.
it's a big problem, and I think by implementing that into our sales, it's going to be a huge difference maker. And if you're asking the question and somebody's giving you a response without clarifying and inserting their own bias into the answer, you'll probably just take the answer and say, oh, they didn't quite understand. Let's move on. And the person who does poke in, the person who does
That's right.
clarify what the meaning is and give the answer that you're actually looking for,
That's right.
they're going to win.
They are, because the differentiating factor when all is equal is how somebody sells.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of people in sales, or if I'm talking to someone that I'm trying to sell, they'll give you all the answers. You'll tell me exactly what you're looking for. And as long as I can do it, I can then just explain this is what we do to make sure that you get that result.
That's right.
But you can also talk yourself out of a sale. I know of a good example of Louis, who's one of our sales manager. He had a salesperson who was talking about the cabin on the boat. The person didn't want a cabin on the boat. They didn't know there was a cabin on the boat. They lost the sale. The person just left because that's something that they did not want on the boat. And they just kind of threw in extra information that had nothing to do with what the person wanted to know about. So you can completely talk your way out of that sale if you don't understand what they're actually asking.
Overselling.
Overselling.
Absolutely. Over communicating.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's possible. You can over communicate.
I think this is really the fundamentals of sales training that people take for granted. You know, we hire a lot of salespeople who have never had traditional sales training. So yeah, you're charismatic, you understand the product, and you come into a conversation,
That's right.
maybe you build a little rapport, and then you start giving your spiel. And then you wonder why you didn't get the deal. You're closing 10% instead of 30, 40%.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the art of learning how to ask questions, how to poke into their brain to figure out what they're actually looking for, what they actually mean with their questions, that's the superpower.
Yeah.
It is. I do. It's funny, without fail, in every single program, somebody always says, what happens if I ask too many questions?
Yeah.
Wait, is it too many effective questions? Because you can't ask too many effective questions. You could be overly inquisitive that could annoy somebody.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do in the training program, whether it's a training or whether it's a keynote, is to ingrain that it's okay to ask questions when you don't understand. It's how you position it or couch it that will determine whether somebody gets annoyed with you or not.
Right. And some people, a lot of kind of one of my probing questions will be, what's your time frame? Do you have 5 minutes? Do you have 15 minutes? So I've been on calls where they said, don't ask me any questions. You've obviously looked at my business. Give me your elevator pitch. I'll make a decision. And so for me, that was actually a really cool scenario where I gave him a 1-minute elevator pitch. I had the credit card 2 minutes in. There was no follow-up questions. That was it.
Wow.
That's all he wanted. He was a busy person. He said, I have a meeting in 5 minutes. I'm interested in your service. Explain what you do.
You read the room well.
And I had actually funny stories. I had just gotten off a call with a salesperson who was trying to sell me, and they were asking me a bunch of questions. I was like, listen, what's your price? What's your service? How effective is it? And they were like, no, I need to know this. I need to know that. I hung up.
And by the way, just as the audience understands, this is the way I need to be right reaction.
I hung up.
I
hung up.
Not the easiest sell, by the way.
Don't waste my time.
Right.
That's right.
But
That's right. That's true.
Understanding the optics is probing to figure out who am I talking to and what is their personality.
That's probably harder to train, right? The ability to pivot, social awareness. The guy came on the call and he's like, give me the elevator pitch. How much does it cost? You had the credit card within 2 minutes. If you would have been following a sales script and you had to ask, imagine what your business would be like if you
Exactly.
had PR.
Yeah.
He would have hung up. He would have hung up. He would have been
I
gone.
would've gone.
Is
Yeah.
that one of the questions we ask?
No.
Okay.
I get asked that question all the time when I'm interested in buying something.
I
Someone
hate
is
that question.
following.
Imagine what your life would be like.
Yeah. Or imagine
I love it.
imagine the impact if you had this.
How would you
service.
feel if you were featured in Forbes? What would that feel like? What would that do
You're
for your
talking to a need to
business?
look good up. I'm loving it. But that's
Yeah, but you know what they're doing.
I know
They're
exactly.
reading a
It's
script.
it feels inauthentic.
It's
Yeah.
manipulative.
That's the way it feels. May not
Right.
be the intention.
It feels that way.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, it is manipulative. They're following a sales script. They hear your answer, and boom, they're on to the next one from a sales script. And
You brought up a really, excuse me, I don't know what I'm talking, but you
Please.
really brought up an interesting thing about, certain things are really hard to learn.
Yeah.
You said something about communication, or the listening question is foundational. You would be amazed. There are successful professionals out there that, my company has a fortunate experience, and I have had the fortunate experience to work with them, that you go over the listening and questioning methodology, and it's like eye-opening.
Yeah.
Not only is it eye-opening, the most common word I hear is rusty. Well, I am rusty.
Yep.
It's because they're just going through the motions, the script, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that's number one. Number two is understanding who you're talking to. Most people have never gone through a program. That a personality assessment is not a program for this. It's when you discern somebody's underlying need, you're able to pivot so you don't annoy and need to be right
Right.
when you're selling them. Very difficult. And you said also something about situational awareness.
Yeah.
Are you present during those meetings or that call? Very difficult to train, whether you are training somebody to condition them when they're younger in their experience, or you're reconditioning when they're more experienced. Hard.
You know what I think probably would take a lot of practice and experience is actually applying what you know about underlying needs, about DISC personality assessments,
Oh, yeah.
being able to peg someone quickly and adjust your answers and adjust your tactics based on what you think that person is. I consider myself decent at sales, but that's
Yeah.
probably just charisma, knowing my product, being an owner. I
Yeah.
don't think I've ever been able to effectively apply those principles because
Could you now, though?
I think I would know how to. I'm not sure I'd be fast enough.
Yet.
Yet.
without practice.
Right.
Fair.
Yeah, it's the EQ behind it. It's being able to read the room, make a decision based on who you're talking to, and modify your communication style for them.
Think about that ballet dance. I mean, there's a lot
Yeah.
going on. But you know what we call people that are able to do that? You know what we call them?
Professionals.
World-class closers.
Pro.
Bro.
Yeah.
You got it. Well, closing happens to be the end result of that good work.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh, it's such a cool thing. And, I always thought about sales training as let's learn these closing tactics. Let's learn the lines that are going to get people to pull out their credit cards. But it's so far from that. I don't think we learned a couple cool lines.
Over the last 2 days?
A couple.
Just a couple?
couple key questions.
Fair.
A few key
Yeah.
questions. that I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
We'll get the close and we'll pay
Yeah.
for this whole thing multiple times over. The one, which I'll bring up in a little bit, that was impactful for me that I want to implement immediately. We'll save that one for
All right.
a few minutes.
Can't wait to hear this one. I can't wait.
I think
You've been
you already-
dying to talk about it, haven't you?
Yeah, since the beginning.
Good.
This is where you want
All
to
right, I get that. I get that.
I already probably know it, but it's something I think everyone's going to get a lot of value from.
Okay.
But what are some of the closing lines, or how do you feel about closing tactics? Is that something that you teach?
It's
We
funny.
didn't talk so much about that.
Funny you bring that up. I literally did 2 virtual programs last week. They were 1 hour. They were for an international company, and we did objection handling because in order to close, you have to flesh out objections.
Right.
Or potential objections, as
Yeah.
you say. So I don't call it closing, I call it tie downs. There are tie down statements that allow the conversation to open up to potentially hear an objection to then close the deal. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I call that a tie down. It's funny, I used to get asked for closing workshops. I'm like, do you want a closing workshop? Or do you actually want a workshop that will make them better so when they ask for the business, it's the easiest thing they've ever done? Like, oh, is that a thing? Yeah, that's a thing.
It's called sales.
That's called selling. If you're just using closing techniques, good luck.
Right.
But I understand the point. I do understand the point. So your question is, what are we talking about, or what am I focused on when we talk about closing? It's the tie downs.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. Would that be helpful?
Please, yeah.
All right, so an example of something like that is there any reason why, based on what we've discussed, what we've talked about, and even potentially agreed on, any particular reason why you wouldn't want to move forward with Otter today?
Yeah,
Flesh it out.
right. Get
And then-
all the objections.
Oh, I throw it up. I am ready. I am
You-
welcoming it.
When do you pull that out? At the beginning, towards the end of the call?
Tie down?
Yeah.
When it makes sense. So depending on what you're selling, so different products and services will depend. Some are 1 call, some are 2 calls, some are 8 calls. When it makes, so it's typically during the end of that process. So with Otter, it could be, let's say 1 or 2. Fair?
Yeah.
1 or 2 calls. It's going to probably happen at the end of either the first meeting or the second meeting. Based on what we've discussed, is there any reason why you wouldn't want to move forward with Otter? Or tell me what you're thinking so far. If you were going to partner with us or any company, what would allow you to do it, and what would keep you from doing it? So those would be tie downs.
I think that's exactly what works nowadays. Whenever someone tries to hard close me, I mean, especially as
Take
an
a shower? Do you
entrepreneur-
feel like you need to take a shower?
Yeah.
I mean,
I feel dirty.
Jay knows you can't hard close me.
And I feel
If
dirty
someone puts
asking.
Nobody's hard closing. It need
Oh,
to be
man.
right.
We had a sales trainer.
oh,
His name's
Not me.
no, not you.
Let's
Not
call him Bob for sales sake. And
you. Jay,
That came to Otter?
no, he was.
he was
Oh.
trying to close us for his sales consulting business.
Oh, I think I know which one this was. Go ahead.
This,
Go
is,
ahead.
this is a different. This is
Oh.
a different example.
Scott,
Okay.
you go ahead and tell the story.
So Jay talked to him first, and Jay said, it's gonna be difficult to get my partner to agree to working with you.
Here's how he is.
And Jay gave him the whole outline of my personality, told him, all these things not to do. And one of the big things he says, don't try to hard close me. And at the end, he got cocky because he thought he had a really good conversation. And he's like, listen, if I give you this discount, but you have to close by in the next
Oh.
24 hours or something.
No.
And I literally got off the phone. I was like, that is a hard no, because he didn't understand how to read the room. He couldn't read me. So how would I think that he could train our team?
Wow.
And Jay had given him literally all the answers.
He came back afterwards. He's like, I fucked that up. He's like, yeah,
Yeah, you did.
he rewatched the sales call. He's like, I know where I went wrong. I'm like, yeah, man, I told you.
Because it didn't make sense.
It didn't make
Didn't
sense.
it to you? It doesn't make sense.
No.
That's right. I get that.
Yeah.
I totally get that.
Yeah, and as soon as you start pulling out closing tactics, you start to look, I think, a little bit desperate. You start to
Yes.
look like you're trying too hard.
That's especially as an entrepreneur in a solo business.
Yeah.
There's no reason why I have to close in 24 hours for a one-person business.
What's going to change?
Nothing's going to
Exactly.
change.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I understand if it's a large company, 50, 100 people, and they're doing a promotion, and you as that salesperson can't control that promotion.
Different.
You know, my boss has allowed me to do this till the end of the month. That's a little bit different, or at least it comes off more transparent.
You don't love it though.
I still don't love it,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that will actually close me. We just signed up for new
Fair enough.
software. It's an HR software. End of quarter, the salesperson calls me and he says, "Hey, I can give you this deal that you asked for, but it has to close by midnight."
Yeah.
And I knew it's a larger organization, thousands of people, and I knew that that was not him. He needed to make some money,
That's right.
and he needed to close, and he got special permission end of quarter. And he's like, "I might be able to do this for you again at the end of next quarter, but
But it's a maybe.
But it's a maybe."
That's
Yeah,
right.
if you're
And
talking to an owner,
Right. If you're
Obvious.
talking to an owner, there's no
not
24-hour
going anywhere.
close. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
super interesting. Yeah, that was a fun one. And funny story, we closed him several months later.
He's
Perfect.
He's working with us for lead gen, and he's had some good success.
He's a friend.
Perfect.
He's
Awesome.
a good guy.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk a little bit about my big takeaway.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm ready.
And I think I brought it up the day that we learned it, and that's salespeople, owners need to ask who they're up against in a conversation. If you're on a sales call and that person is looking at multiple options, they're interviewing different companies, as most entrepreneurs do.
Sure they do.
You're almost never just talking to one person unless you're referred there. You're pretty sure. I look, I interview, I date around before I make a final decision. I
Sure.
look at pricing, I look at structure.
Makes sense.
And there's certain things that I'm looking for in those structures. You know, do they have a money back guarantee? Is it month to month? Are they trying to lock me into a long-term contract? Who am I going to be working with? What's the reputation like? And almost nobody asked me who I'm shopping around with, but that's such a powerful question because now it arms me with knowledge that I could use to close a deal. I know what they're looking for. I know it's important to them.
That's exactly right.
Paul, why is that question important? Why do salespeople need to ask what they're up against?
So Jay's referring to competition.
Yes.
By the way, competition is also status quo. I want to be clear. They may be looking at nobody and just sticking with who they have. That's also competition. You need to do this. The number one reason why you need to ask about who people are looking at or who you're up against is because you as a selling professional want to put together a strategy to be best against who you're going up against. I said this in the room yesterday, and I'll repeat myself on this. It's naive to think that you're not going up against competition. It's also naive to think that just because you plug or talk about the strengths of what you're selling, you don't know what you're up against. And that's why you need to know to put together a strategy to win. And by the way, when you do know who you're up against, it's incredibly important to talk about the strengths based on what you are up against to the customer. You should also, as a professional and as a valid consultant, talk about the weaknesses that you might run up against. Listen, I bought out of opportunities where I feel like I wouldn't be a good fit with them if they're looking for certain things.
The weakness is a big part to me. Is I think that it brings a lot of credibility and trust.
Totally.
If you say, "Hey, I'm very interested in this," and you're like, "That's actually a weakness for us," or you say, "That's a really good strength, but this is our weakness." I think it builds that instant trust where you know what to expect. And we
That's right.
we did a whole conversation about setting expectations. If we just brought on a whole new team where lead generation is a newer division for us. So if you thought we've been doing it for 40 years and we're going to be world class, we are world class. But it's
You
still.
are.
It's
Why do you think
still-
I'm?
Yeah.
Why do you think I'm
It's-
here?
It's still a newer business, so we're saying
That's right.
we're developing it. A lot of our new clients understand that they're gonna be a little bit more flexible with us, and we've been transparent. Hey, there might be a couple of hiccups as we test out new things with you, but we're gonna guarantee our service. We're gonna take care of you the whole way. Just trust us, and we'll take care of you. But that transparency into the weakness, whatever that small piece is critical.
Yeah, and obviously there's a need to be right. You like it when somebody feels real.
It feels
Yeah.
a lot more transparent.
That's right.
Yeah, I think
That's
the relationship between prospect and salesperson needs to be very human. And as soon as you start implementing closing tactics, you lose a lot of that humanity. You lose a lot of the relationship.
100%.
Versus the example, like exposing your weaknesses, pulling an M&M coming out of the gate and saying all of the downsides to working with you, I think is really disarming. It's really humanizing, and I think it instills a lot of trust.
It 100% does. And I want to add something. How you doing, big guy?
Oh, Moses is in every podcast.
He's great.
He makes his way in.
He's great. So I do want to say that there are a lot of times selling professionals, they think, well, what happens if I bring up the competition and they weren't thinking about the competition?
Right.
My answer is something called the Amazon effect. You don't think they're going to research.
Yeah.
You don't think people can find it. I mean, come on, this is 2023. This isn't 2004 where they don't have access. Maybe even before that. But they don't have access to find out. So listen, you're not going to bring up something they haven't already thought. These are much more well-educated buyers no matter what people are buying.
Absolutely. The internet, that's why we're in business. There's so much information on me, on Jay, on Otter PR in the news, and that helps because you can point to that, and that's third-party validation on the strengths and weaknesses, and you can
100%.
highlight, as we were seeing in Forbes for doing this specific crisis management. Crisis management's one where we've been featured in Forbes multiple times, so there's a lot of credibility and trust where I can just say, oh, here, I'll send you an article about us that was published in Forbes, and that builds that trust.
That's right.
It's a big piece.
Paul, here's something I wanted to ask you that I didn't get the chance to yesterday regarding this competition thing.
Yeah.
We're in an industry where their prices, their structure isn't laid out on their homepage. You can't just click on a pricing.
Yeah.
You need to talk to somebody in order to figure out how much they're going to charge, what that contract term looks like.
It's customized. It's bespoke.
It's customized.
We can't give you the pricing on the website. I get it.
Yeah. How do we know what we're up against? What is the strategy that companies or owners can use to go figure that out? So say I'm interviewing PR firms. I'm looking at Otter PR. I'm looking at Edelman. I'm looking at Waxman. And I'm researching the competition. I'm going to Edelman's website, going to Waxman's website. I don't know how much they charge. Do I ask that prospect what Edelman's charging them? Or do I go ghost shop at Edelman to see what their average contract value is?
The secret shopping is the way to do it. Now,
Yeah.
in strategic opportunities, you have somebody called a coach inside an account that can give you inside information that they may not be supposed to be sharing, that they may share to you as a selling professional before what you're doing. The ghost shopping. Or if somebody's asking, you have a prospect, you ask them if you don't mind sharing, what are they charging?
Yeah. I guess when are you over the line?
What do you mean? Remember radical candor?
Yeah. What are they charging you? Are they? And then it becomes about price. I don't necessarily want it to be about.
Well,
price.
I mean, listen, if they're shopping apples to apples, you're going to have to know what kind of investment would you be looking at when you start. What are you seeing out there?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you are putting it online.
We are.
Correct.
For now, it's coming off soon.
You're feeling like that is a strategy you may want to reconsider.
Yeah. Especially once we get to, Edelman.
By the way, I really like that you did that.
Yeah.
It was crystal clear to me, to be honest. Depends what kind of buyer it depends what kind of size company you want and the buyer you want.
I think it turns away huge companies. It turns away the whales because they're looking at Edelman, who's charging $40,000 a month.
So the big ones charge, what, 15 to 40? Wherever they are, right?
Yeah. With long-term contracts.
Do you want the big ones?
I want to talk to the big ones, and I feel like the big ones don't even look at us because we're priced too low.
We'll lose clients because their goal is to spend 20, and then we'll
this is tricky.
Yeah, it is. It's something we've been going back and forth on. So I'd love to
we
know
also price out small entrepreneurs that need less service. So there's
I get that.
And so
But the fact that you're flexible is fantastic.
Yeah.
By the way. I want to be clear about that. That's a very attractive. You're nimble.
Yeah.
You're nimble for sure. I have to tell you, I will be candid. And when Caroline and I were looking at different options, the one thing that really stood out to me was your structure was so clear to me.
Mm-hmm.
It was. Now I'm a boutique shop.
Yeah.
I'm not a whale, although I consider myself a whale. I don't. Oh, this is a tricky one. I really enjoyed the fact that you had it there. Do you feel like it's too transparent? Do you feel like you're missing opportunities?
I feel like it takes away some of our flexibility. I think I'd love to be able to put together a $20,000 per month deal for the whale, and I'd love to be able to put down a $2,000 per month deal for the startup.
Why don't you put packages but say that we have ranges that you may, if you're needing more, we can absolutely support more. We don't want to put a specific price tag on it, but put a range. But it could go up to $20,000. These are very popular packages for certain size companies, for certain sizes. I'd be a little more explicit with that, but I felt like that was a huge win for you that you put it on there.
For you.
Me.
for you.
Right.
For me.
Because you saw the price, you're established. It didn't scare you away.
Didn't scare me away. By the way, when I don't see a price, I'm like,
Me too.
Me too.
they're gonna make it up.
That's
they're gonna feel me out. They're gonna see how well I'm doing, and they're gonna make it up. That irks me.
Yeah.
that's why
Kind of. I gotta think about it.
that's why I've been debating it, because I know when I shop, I look a lot of sites. I won't even get on a call with them, because first off, I assume they're bad at sales. So if I can't just get a price, then I assume that I have to get software. I have to get on a intro call where they have to qualify me, even though they could have spent 2 seconds Googling and seeing that my revenue's literally posted online. And so then they're like, okay, you're a good fit. Then they're gonna try to get me on account executive, which might take another 4 days. They've lost my sale. I'm not signing up for that.
Has anyone said to you you shouldn't put the pricing on the page?
Yeah. His
Yeah.
older sister, who's a VP of sales at Salesforce.
She's
Okay,
one of our she's one of our mentors.
It's a killer whale.
Killer whale.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
So her background and experience is with startups. She's brought multiple startups from $1 million to $25 million to exit,
Yeah.
and she's done it 5 times. So
So she knows what she's talking
She
about.
knows
for
what she's
sure.
talking
I get that.
about.
I get that.
But also, if you look at anybody in our industry who's at our size, charging what we're charging, and you go to their website, there's probably a reason that none of them have a pricing section on their
Right.
website.
That's right. Now, there is. Are you worried that this is pigeonholing you to a certain size customer,
Yes, to 2 certain size customers.
which are what?
The whales and the startups, the ones who are scared by the price because they think it's too high, and we can do
Too
less.
high?
Yeah, I think some people think our price is too high. Our
Oh.
middle package is $6,000 a month. That's a lot for a startup. We're priced perfectly for you, and you're our ideal client right now. But if a whale looks at us, they're going to think, wow, way too cheap. They must not be as good as Waxman. Whereas a startup hits our page, they're like, I don't know if we
So
can,
there
we
is
can do
there
that.
is a theory, and I run into this with. I'm very cognizant of this, that sometimes people feel like, wow, the whales might think, oh, this is fairly inexpensive. Maybe this is not their thing to work
Right.
with us.
Yes.
I get that. Maybe there's a different package. So I thought the transparency, and by the way, I heard it from more than a few people. Actually, I heard. I'm sharing this. Whether this goes on the podcast or not, what you're talking about is they thought it was fair, like equitable.
Yeah.
Because there is a grayness to PR.
Yes.
There's just a lot of subjectivity. Fair. It's not for the need to be right. It's a. There are certain metrics you can use, but it can be subjective to the buyer. Fair?
absolutely,
Yeah.
and that's kind of to the questioning, is understanding what a good campaign is to you, because good campaign to me with
Good PR is very labor intensive. And I think that's why the big PR firms do charge so much, is
Get
they
it.
pay their experts a lot of money, and there's a lot of experts on a single account.
Yeah.
Good PR takes a lot of good people.
it does.
That, and there's more overhead. I mean,
Yeah.
there's other reasons that people are paying. Like, wait a minute, what am I paying for? I just thought this was like, listen, for a. Now, the other question becomes people experienced with PR firms versus not experienced. What are you looking to attract?
If they're experienced with PR firms, they understand the pricing,
So
and
you're fine with that.
we're fine with that. I think
Okay.
for the most part, if they're experienced with PR firms, we actually tend to do very well with people that come in
Yeah.
who have experience, because they have knowledge, they know what they're looking for, they know how the cycle works. Those are probably some of our favorite clients.
And they are very happy with
And-
us.
and
compared to
typically-
what they've,
yeah.
what they've seen in the past.
Typically, we've had clients come in, they're like, I worked with this PR firm for a year, and in the first month, they've gotten more success with us, which is incredible.
Let me ask this: when you talk about whales, give me a size company of a whale.
Our largest company that we worked with is Alibaba.
Got that?
That's not a.
That's a whale.
No,
That's
no,
the
no,
whale I want.
that's
I'd
a
like to
mega
bring on
whale.
Amazon. I'd
I
like to
got-
bring on
I got that.
Salesforce.
No, it's not small, but give me a. As
Let's
you think
say
about
100 million.
100 million. Okay, so there's definitely a few $100 million companies out there. There's more than a few.
Yeah.
Then to me, this is where our BDRs and lead generation come. They target them, and then all the other opportunities that are out there benefit from the pricing on the website. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
I actually think you start to target them.
Yeah.
And you have campaigns to target them individually, and they may say, "Well, does that pricing apply to us?" Well, we have bespoke programs that it could apply to you, but maybe it doesn't.
Yeah.
What do you
Thought
think?
about that too, putting up a different page on our website dedicated to the whales. A black
I would say
package.
enterprise, whatever you want to
An
call
enterprise
it.
package.
Yeah. I think, and by the way, maybe you give a range, or if you're not comfortable giving a range, just say this goes back to the we have to have we have to have customized conversations. But that's legit. But
Yeah.
but range is, how about this? Range is transparent. people like transparency. So if you give a range, you're not locking yourself in.
And we'll always have, when we book someone, we always have a disclaimer. So I think on ours it says packages start at $4,000 a month, and that's a big thing because before we were getting people that they thought they were going to pay $100.
We still get them.
And we still get them somehow. They
Qualifiers
still
work, but yeah.
I mean, they help a lot. It
Yeah.
improved it a lot.
But and think about it, the model is still evolving, and you're fleshing things out. But I really like the idea of targeted.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, how many 100 million? There's a few.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I mean, even two. I mean,
Thousands
even 50 million. I mean, you're talking about that 50 to 250. There are a number of them.
How do you get a whale? If you're saying targeted, like what does a BDR do? Who do they talk to at that company? It's probably not the owner of the $100 million company. Who should they go after?
Well,
How do
they
they
ask the
initiate
PR
the conversation?
experts. Hold on for a second. I hate to ask a question with a question, but
Please.
as a PR expert, I would think CMO, Chief Marketing Officer.
That's what my first thought would be.
I'm thinking someone in marketing for sure.
Sometimes sales, I think it depends on who has the budget and who has the pain point. So if you're a salesperson, you have a sales team, you have to hit a goal, and you're having trouble converting, I think that PR is a good piece for conversion. So yes, it's marketing, but it's also
Oh, it depends. That's right. That's true.
It's
Lead
top of-
generation. Sure,
it
sure.
can be top of mind for a salesperson as well.
I think that there are multiple. So first of all, there are multiple organizations they could be going after. So let's say it could be in the sales organization, it could be in the marketing. I guess it could be in operations
Yeah.
potentially. So there's multiple organizations, and I will say this: that whoever goes after them, they need to understand strategic selling, which is a whole different ballgame.
Define strategic selling. What does that mean?
Complex sale, comprehensive complex sale, where there are multiple organizations and multiple decision making. I call them players
Mhm.
that are involved in that decision. That doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
So this sales cycle is not going to be one. It's not going to be two. You're probably looking at, probably a quarter's worth of a decision making.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, you should be charging more for that. It's going to be a bigger opportunity, but your people are going to have to be more skilled. I'm not saying they're not skilled today,
Right.
but that would take a little bit of a different skill.
Do you think the initial outreach changes from a generic email to maybe you send a gift? Maybe it's a phone call.
Oh,
What do
you went with the old school.
yeah.
You
You
know,
want to
they-
land a whale, you got to use some bait.
So, and
Oh wow.
uh,
That was-
Jay, ladies and gentlemen.
Land a big fish.
I will say that's kind of funny, actually.
It's great.
I would say, so there are a lot of companies that have BDR, SDR organizations, and and I mentioned this to Haley, that they're using video. They are reaching out to companies with video emails.
Yep.
And because that's more today's world. The phone is much less. So how they're doing it, and they are targeting specific opportunities, and they have campaigns that go after them. They'll do emails, they'll do video, and they're looking to, as you know, schedule appointments with their account executives. So they're doing it today. I work with those size companies, a lot of them. So and it works. It's definitely though it's gritty.
Yeah.
It's gritty, but
You know, it's crazy with AI now. Have you seen what you can do with AI avatars?
you're gonna be better.
I did it to myself. I cloned myself with AI.
How did that come out?
Cloned my voice.
How'd that come out?
It's not quite there, but it's good enough for an email.
It's good for an email.
For me to, an AI
So you
version
can
of me,
actually talk to it, or actually like the written, the way it's
it'll
written.
talk
It'll
in my voice. It'll be
You
my
have to
face
send me
and
that.
my
You're
mouth.
gonna- No. Oh yes, I have seen that.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
It's really cool. I get cold emails like this, and I always open them to see if they're real or not. And
How do you know that? Do you know how to
So
like
typically-
coding? Are you like a coder?
no, typically, yeah, sometimes.
Okay.
Honestly,
Good.
but typically what you'll see is it'll be a video, and they'll take a screenshot basically of your LinkedIn or your website, and then there'll just be a talking face in the corner. If that screenshot never moves around your website, and they're not engaging with it, and they're not highlighting things, if it's not an actual video, it's faked.
Yeah.
So they'll make the video in the corner. It'll be the exact same script, and the only thing they're mouthing over is Scott, or your name and maybe your company name, and the rest is just a canned video.
I got it. And
But-
they can send it out to a
And
lot.
they can send it out to anyone they want. What I'm looking for is people that are actually highlighting different things that I've done, talking directly to me, talking about a publication they saw me in, and then the video moving to my website, then to my LinkedIn. That's the custom piece of it. That's real.
And that works on me. Whenever I get an email or a message like that, and they really did take the time to go through my website, to go through my social and make a personalized video for me, and I know it's personalized.
Yeah.
They get a meeting out of me.
Yeah, same.
You know what? There's something as I'm listening to both of you and certainly enjoying the culture. We had 4 puppies in the training.
One
It's
here.
just, one's sitting on my lap or close to my lap. The other thing you'd want to think about as you target new opportunities is, there are a lot of companies looking for fresh, new, eager, energized. That's the ones you got to flesh out.
Yeah.
Those are the type of buyers you need to go out. Now, how you find them? I mean, you're going to have, this better than I, but a social media campaign.
Yeah.
It is, and you guys have a very young, fresh look. I mean, it's exciting. It's refreshing. It's what, if anybody was looking for that, they should be looking at you guys. And that's how I would be thinking towards this.
Have you seen any of our ads? I don't know if you got targeted with them after you booked a call. I don't know if you're on
Yeah.
Facebook,
Oh, yeah.
Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not shy in the video, by the way.
I try and get other people involved in the ads too. We had
No. Scott's popped up a few times.
I will say there's a couple ads where Jay's like, anyone, please, anyone do this.
fine, I'll do it.
But it's I will say it's authentic.
Thanks.
I mean, I would imagine. First, I want to be clear. There are obviously very reputable names within PR and marketing that do very well. I'm not an PR expert, but this feels different.
Yeah.
It feels more fresh to me, and I'm the type of buyer that I just want the latest and greatest and new, because that's how I feel. I try to keep my brand very relevant.
Yeah. I think in general, you want people that are hungry.
Oh yeah.
When you get old school PR companies, they're not hungry anymore. They've got systems that work. They've got people that have been there forever.
They have a machine.
Yeah, they've
Machine
got
that
a
has worked for
There's
sure.
perks to that. There's pros to that.
100%.
Yeah.
But people will pay for it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, they will. They will. So, I just to put a bow on, I would still keep the pricing. My opinion, keep the pricing up there, but allow for an enterprise piece.
It's such a fun conversation. There's so
Very
many,
enjoyable.
yeah, pros and cons to the price on the website specifically. We've gone back and forth on this so many times.
But I remember it.
Yeah.
I can still picture it.
Yeah.
And when people say, "Hey, what package?" I mean, it's easy to understand.
There's a lot of design in theory that went into the pricing that's currently there. That's our probably 5th iteration, and it's very intentional, like what you see, how it's designed, the engagement. You click on it to move the pricing.
Yeah.
I think it's easy. By the way,
I guess we could always put it back. You can take it away, put it back.
Yeah.
Fine.
you didn't take it away, did you?
No, we
Not
haven't.
yet.
By the way, I mean, it's not dissimilar to a SaaS model. I mean,
Same with our colors. That you asked about the colors. A lot
yeah,
of it is
there's a
that
lot of colors.
Gradients. Yeah.
Excuse me, gradients.
Yeah.
Yes.
The SaaS is all about gradients. the
Yeah, yeah.
blues.
But that and the pricing, a lot of SaaS companies put their pricing on there.
as it should be. It's
That's right.
software.
That's exactly right. But that
Software.
makes it easy to make a decision.
Yeah.
So I'm just throwing it out there. And they can have enterprise customers for sure.
I think it lowers our sales cycle.
Yes.
You see the
Yes.
price. You
Yes.
already know whether you're interested in buying. Then you get on the phone. You confirm your questions. Then you can make a purchase.
That's exactly right.
Probably do a whole episode on
The pricing structure.
how to make a pricing structure, because that's a whole beast in itself
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Like, where do you
Yeah,
push
yeah.
people?
And
to
that's
which-
I bet that's fluid, dynamic, changing constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we took a lot from Amazon just in the structure of how you do compare and contrast, and looked at what a lot of people are doing. But I mean, Amazon's the expert at so many things.
Trial and error.
Yeah.
Paul, in your 23 years as a sales and leadership coach, what are some of the most valuable lessons that you've learned from helping companies?
I would say that people are open to getting better when you have identified an opportunity for them to get better. If you don't go into a training, a speaking event, a coaching event, and open up their eyes to something, it is not worthwhile to them. I've really noticed this. So I really want to make sure that I can make that experience happen to open up their eyes that there is an opportunity to be better. So that has been a common theme over the years, for sure. And I will say this, that people that are in the workforce, I would say collectively, want to be the best that they can be. A lot of times they just don't know how to get there. So they at the end of programs, at the end of keynotes, they're always appreciative for the investment that somebody made in their development. I think those are the two things.
Very good.
Yeah.
What are some low-hanging fruit that you've noticed in leaders and salespeople? Places of weakness that you can go in and change relatively quickly. Where do they struggle?
Oh, this is an easy one. Can I give you the leadership?
Yeah, leadership first.
Hey, you are a great individual contributor. Bravo. You're probably going to make a great leader. Let's not give you the training to make that happen.
We made that mistake.
I mean, this is, by the way, so bravo, the meritocracy, bravo.
Right.
But if you're going to take somebody as a top level producer, high performer, individual contributor, you have to make sure, first of all, they have the characteristics.
Yeah.
But then to place them like overnight into a leadership role and expect that you're going to get that same type of high performance without coaching and training, that is a swing and a miss. That's a glaring one, by the way. And I will say, from the sales side, is the big miss is the lack of consistent coaching. Listen, you both are athletes. You both have competed at high levels. How much coaching did you take to get to that level? I mean, obviously you had some innate skill. Did you need coaching?
So many coaches.
Right.
A
Great
lot.
coaches.
Yeah.
Constant, right?
All
In
the
your
time.
ear, in
All the
your
time.
ear, all the time.
Yeah, world class. It's
But
need
it gets you. That's how you get there. You don't get great on your own. And a lot of times now, listen, the environments are faster. They're faster paced with technology. A lot of times people are being asked to do more with less. And the issue is that they're not consistently coaching people to elevate their game. That's another big miss. It's not that they're intentionally doing that. They just don't have time to do it.
Yeah. And I think at a certain level, it's hard to find mentors because it's either too expensive or you just don't have availability of
I
them
mean, to go outside.
to go outside.
Oh, yeah. Very difficult. Finding mentors is a real hard thing.
It is.
It is. You have to trust them. They have to be wanting and willing to do it. There's a lot of that for sure. I will tell you, though, people do pay out of their own pocket for their own development. Some do that. It's not the majority, though.
I do. You should, I think.
entrepreneurs. I think need
Entrepreneurs
to.
are different.
For sure.
We're built different.
For sure.
We view money differently when it comes to, because it's an investment. You're going to get the return as long as
Not
it's
everybody sees it. I agree with you.
Right.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, not everyone can pour money into themselves and see their bank account change. Entrepreneurs do in most
Correct.
cases.
Correct.
Yeah. And
Scott, what was your big takeaway from these past couple days? What did you
So
learn?
actually, I was talking about mentorship. So I have a good team of mentors, but I never thought of the way you said it as everyone should have their own team of mentors. And I feel like a lot of my peers, a lot of my team members don't have that. They don't have that go-to person that's really going to coach them up. So Jay mentioned my sister, who's an executive, my brother-in-law, who
Wow.
is the CEO of a massive company in real estate.
Right.
So when it comes to buying this building, when it comes to sales training, when it comes to
Good advice.
legal, I have different mentors that I go to. Some of them have to pay legal, I have to pay. But I have people that I trust. And that for me is critical because if we're facing a lawsuit or if we're facing something, I can make a quick call and say, hey, is it worth my time? Should I just settle? Should I go through this process? Should I buy this building? Should I make this investment? It is peace of mind for me, especially as someone who needs to be right, hearing it from someone else, even if it's just them telling me it'll be okay, go do it. And I need that. And it's very helpful. And I think that everyone that's listening, go find mentors. And if you can't afford it or if you don't have that network, YouTube, as Jay would say, is YouTube. There's e-learning. You can find
Another channel.
Anything.
Channel. And as you mentioned, mentors, and I happen to call them board of directors, same idea.
board directors.
Because sometimes people don't want to say, well, that they're part of my board of directors. It just seems easier for them to say that. But I 100% agree. You just don't get great on your own. And sounding boards, because life's about decisions.
Yeah.
Life is about decisions. So why not have somebody help you make a better decision if you had that opportunity?
Absolutely.
It's my favorite thing about podcasting. I get to meet people like you with different
It's been great.
different categories of experience. Like if I ever need help with sales and leadership, now I've got somebody to call. Not necessarily for marketing maybe or social media or content creation. You've got different mentors for different things.
That's right.
So whenever I need help in various areas of life, just probably 3 people that I've interviewed on my podcast on their subject matter expertise that I can call and get advice there. So another great, it's a little bit tougher to do, but start a podcast and get in front of people, poke their brains. People love it.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Paul, thank you for coming the past couple days.
Jay and Scott, it's been my pleasure.
It's been awesome.
You guys have created a culture that is a benchmark by which others should follow.
Real quick, who surprised you the most and why? Who did you meet over the past couple days in our organization? Not me or Scott.
Sometimes I judge books by covers,
We all do. We're human.
but the Need to Look Goods really do.
Yeah.
We really do. I was surprised with certain people that I had judged, maybe that they thought they would Need to Look Goods. They tried to convince me they were not, and they did convince me.
Mm-hmm.
So I won't be using names.
Yeah.
but that was a real surprise to me. And the other thing that really stood out to me is, I will say this, because one of the things that I was concerned about was I can be uber intense. I think I mentioned this to the groups, and I was like, wow, I'm really going to have to take my foot off the gas pedal. But what I really learned was, first of all, it's okay to do that.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two is, what I learned was, even though you have a less experienced crowd, you can gently put your foot on the gas pedal.
Yeah.
But you do have to pivot. So I know I'm not directly putting a name on a person, but I wasn't pleasantly surprised with how well I thought it went, because I hate to say this. I always know it's going to go well, but what I was pleasantly surprised was is everybody was engaged for the full 16 hours.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
It's just one last thing.
You can shoot away. I love questions.
It's
I got a
funny
second wind here, people.
it seemed like the need to be liked
Yeah.
masqueraded as the other one. The need to do good. What are we? Need to look good.
Not do good, look good.
Look
Need
good.
to look goods. They need to look goods. We're masquerading now.
You mean their look
Yeah.
masqueraded?
Yeah.
Look
Sure.
is like, yeah.
Yeah, so
The
when you
need to be likes. Look, they do care about their looks. They need to.
not all, not every,
Not all of them.
not all of them, but sometimes it can be.
Some
I
of
mean,
them
his
masquerade
number
as
one
need
is
to
not
look
need to
goods.
look good, but you're into your appearance. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
It's on video, by the way.
Yeah, I'm nodding, but let's get some audio here. Yes, I care about my appearance. I make sure to shower,
But
clean,
that's not his
dress.
number one, though.
No.
That's not his number one.
But it is my number 2.
Close. I actually think it's a close number 2.
Very close.
We talked about you smiling versus not.
Yeah.
You're the right one.
It'll switch.
That's fair. That's fair. They can masquerade, for sure.
All right. Lastly, Paul, you're not on Instagram, so people who are watching this or
No.
referred to you from our awesome
okay.
organization,
Yeah.
where can people get in touch with you?
Oh, LinkedIn, baby.
Yeah.
I'm all over it.
You know, you
I-
have another Paul Bramson on LinkedIn who looks just enough like you to get confusing.
Are you sure about that?
I think so. I'll show you.
Really?
Yeah.
It's Bramson. If you're wondering, but yes, to get in touch, 2 things. My website, paulbramson.com, or the paulbramsoncompanies.com either, or LinkedIn for sure, Paul Bramson.
We'll link your social assets and your website in the show notes and the YouTube description so people don't have to look too hard. This has been a blast, and I'm ready to go get some food and drinks and go kick it with the team.
Jay and Scott, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.